Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 36. Today, I went across the water to Ireland to bring in our guest, Louise Crowley. Louise, if you'd like to say hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Not at all. I'm very much looking forward to this episode. I came across you, oh God, I can't even remember how long it would be ago, but I'm going to get into that as we go, and I'll try and get a bit of a more natural reaction. It was something that came up in social media that originally drew me to you. But Louise is massive on Instagram, and I say massive, and I know she's going to be like, "Oh, it's not massive," but it is massive. It's like 25,000 people follow her, so quite a notable account. I'm sure we'll all agree. I'm almost at 1,000. Don't mean to brag. So yeah, rubbing shoulders with the stars today, shall we say? But enough of me talking a load of nonsense, Louise. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? Was farming always for you? Are you from a farm? Tell us a bit about that. Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer, a weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
Yeah, so a bit about me. I'm 27. I'm full-time dairy farming since 2018. Came home to the home farm, and I'm farming in partnership with my dad. So it's just the two of us. And we're aiming to milk 185 cows this year. Farming, definitely the plan was always to be coming home to the farm at some point in my life. I'd say around the time I was doing my junior certs or my exams when I was like 13, I knew I wanted to go farming, and that was fine. I tied with the idea maybe of becoming an agricultural science teacher for a while. Thought maybe, I didn't want to go straight home farming when I was 18 after school. And then I decided, as I got closer to finishing school, I says, why am I bother doing that when the end goal is to be on my own farm? I was like, why not start where I want to end up? And, in farming, if you take 5 years out of something, you could gain a lot of improvements and stuff in that time. So I was like, sure, look, I might as well start as I mean to go on.
So you went onto the farm, but not full time out of school. Is that what you're saying then? If I picked that up right.
So what I was doing, from the age of 14, 15, I was always working on the farm. So before school, after school, weekends, summer holidays. And then I did finish my school exams, and I did go on to college. I went to the agricultural college that was only half an hour away from me. So I did my dairy certificate, so dairy herd management. So I did 2 years there and loved it, but I was still farming at home with it as well. And as part of it, you have to do on-farm placements. So I ended up working on 2 local farms for 3 months spells too, and I'm still working at home, kind of fitting it all in. And I finished that then, and I said there was probably a bit more to learn before I came home fully farming in my own right. I wanted to learn more about like nutrition and breeding and things like that. So I went on to a university then for 3 more years, but that was an hour away, but I was all up and down the road to the farm, still farming the weekends and the summer and the whole lot. But I finished all my education then in 2018, and I was back in with a bang into the farm, full steam ahead.
And what college, university was that? Is that Greenmount?
No, so at the time it was called the Cork Institute of Technology, but right. It's now the Munster University now.
Right, okay. Quite enjoy it?
So it was based in Cork.
Right, yeah. Quite enjoy your uni days, your student life?
I did. I suppose I went to the college in Limerick that it was more practical and hands-on. It was a working farm college. It was a bit unusual. There was 107 of us in the course, and I was the only girl. So there was plenty of attention. I definitely stood out amongst everyone. And then when I went on to the next college, it was more 50-50, it was a bit more normal. But that side then was more lecture based and, literature and stuff.
107-1. Jeez, so that's quite something. That I'm sure that was an experience for you in itself.
Definitely, and it goes to show that was only 2018 or 2013 when I started going there, and at the time there was meant to be 5 girls doing the course, and the principal felt that he should warn me that the other 4 had decided to go and do different degrees somewhere else and weren't going to go, and was I still going to be comfortable being the only girl? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. And he's like, just making sure now, before you come, you'll be on your own. I was like, this is grand. But I like to take from it, I ended up winning best student of the year in my final year there for my farm business plan, and going on to represent the college then, competing against the other college students. And out of all 107 of us, I was the best welder out of them all. So,
well, I mean, there we are. I mean, you didn't even need the other 4. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, what did that award involve? How did that work?
So, as part of your course, you had to come up with a 5-year plan for your farm enterprise. So, what you wanted to achieve, where you wanted the farm to be, and how you were going to get there. So it was everything from the financials, stocking numbers, your grass measurements, your improvements. That was all taken into account. So it was something that was very new to me at the time, but it really did stand to me because within, I suppose, the first year that I kind of came home farming, I actually bought another farm. So it was grand to have that business plan in my pocket from 2015.
Yeah, excellent. Jesus, it's not like you do things by half. Really go for it.
Yeah, but things like it was a farm of land that we were renting it. It was kind of our out farm silage ground, and it came up for sale. And these things, land doesn't come up for sale very often. And we just said we had to go for it. And unfortunately, the way the banks work and things like that, they were more inclined to loan money to a young person like myself. Yeah. My dad is only in his early 50s, and they still weren't even that inclined to give him any money or have him on the loan or whatever. So I went out on it on a limb for myself. But sure, look, till be there. It's still the family farm. It doesn't matter whose name is on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting one. I've not bought land, but I've bought a couple of houses in the last year, and it's an interesting process. It's a fun one. And they do not want older people, and old doesn't need to be old. It's a tricky game. But quickly to jump back to the farm, for those of you listening, guys, if you want to follow Louise on Instagram, it's Louise Crowley Farms. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
it. Follow it. There's a lot of farming Instagram and Facebook accounts out there, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Louise. It's quite cool. There's almost this community of us all, where we all sort of get to know each other, and things like this help and so it's really good. One thing I really enjoy about Louise's Instagram page is it's not just posting photos of calves. There's definitely that, but it's also sort of looking into I wouldn't go maybe as far as saying science, but look at the nutrition, what grass actually means, that sort of stuff. It's educational, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but also quite good fun. So I'd advise going and checking it out. This will maybe get you 2 follows, Louise, but still, it's worthwhile at the end of the day. You say you're milking, was it 185? You said. What breed is that you're milking? Could you tell us?
So we milked 174 last year, and we have about 130 calved at the moment. So about 55 left to go. It's mainly British Frisian. There's a couple crossbreds in there, a couple of jerseys kind of slipped in a few years back. and they've kind of slipped back out again. But mainly British Frisian. I like the black and white kind of blocky cow, low maintenance.
Yeah, yeah. What sort of yield are you looking at roughly? You got an idea?
They're at about, they're just shy of about the 5,000 mark.
Right.
Like our herd is very young. It's something, you know, I'm looking at breeding to try and improve, and I'm hoping with a bit of age, that they haven't hit their maturity really yet. There's definitely 40% of the herd are probably under 4 years old at the moment.
Right.
Just we've had a high replacement rate there since 2018. I don't know whether you would we had a really bad drought here in 2018. It was just awful. I'll never forget my first year fully farming at home, because our farm would be quite high, and in the whole of 2018 we put the diet feeder away for a month. The rest of the year it got put away for April. It was back out in May. I was feeding silage out in paddocks. There was just nothing. The place was brown. And then I suppose with all the stress of it on the cows and everything, there was a big cell count mastitis outbreak. So I ended up me having to cull about 40 cows as a result of it. So that's why the herd got rapidly very young, because they were taken out of it. And of course, they were always the best cows get these problems.
Typical, isn't it? It's got to be always.
Always. And it's always the cow that's the poor milker that'll go and calf every year, and nothing ever happens there.
So for those of you listening, farming is not the easiest thing to get into. Let's try and carve that idea. Could you just tell the listeners there, Louise, because it might not mean much to a lot of them. I've got a farming demographic, and I've also got a lot of people that are interested in getting into farming. Just how long that your feed wagon would normally be in the shed?
Oh yeah. So normally we pull it out from about the middle of November, and it should be parked again by March. And like generally we'd have cows here by January, would be going out to grass. So every week after that, it's getting less and less use. But yeah, it was just ridiculous.
It's funny, you look back on these years, and I mean, I was too young to sort of fully be involved, but I was in 2013. This wouldn't have hit you guys in 2013, where we are a massive snow hit, and I mean, I'm talking height of the house snow, you know, and yeah, just different. Like looking back on those days, you're like, thank God it's not like that at the minute. But yeah, that's 1 month. That's quite something, that is. What sort of, I guess in the sort of that yield, you're maybe looking at higher protein and butter fats. What sort of market are you aiming for?
Yeah, so like we wouldn't have ever had the cows that were doing the huge yields, the massive chase and liters and things. So we're probably in a better position to improve the breeding to go towards the milk solid side. We're supplying Kerry Co-op is the name of who we supply, and they are the milk. It's going for, you know, for liquid milk, and it's going for cheese as well. So yeah, it goes between both. The companies doing both.
No, good. And what sort of system is it you're running? Is it heavily grass based, or what are you looking at?
Yeah, definitely. Grass is the cheapest thing you can feed a cow, and it's the best thing for them. Definitely more inclined. I'm starting to try and cut back more the amount of meal usage that's on the farm. At the moment, we're on about 700 ton a cow, or 700 kg a cow.
I was going to say they're
year.
fed well.
Yeah, no, my bad. Yeah, so I know there's a lot of people around here that would be feeding the ton a cow. So we're under that a good bit, but I would be trying to bring that towards the 600 kg mark.
Nice.
Looking at from May, June, July, there are peak milking months, but there also are peak grass growth months. So with measuring the grass, being really keeping an eye on it. So once it hits the end of April, start of May, I'd be measuring grass every 5 days here to keep it the best quality as possible. If it goes too far, the cows don't get it, cut it for silage, take it out. The better the quality of the grass going in, the less meal they will need. So yeah, it's a work in progress. It's something I'm learning about constantly here and trying to better. But yeah, grass management is absolutely key to keep the meal down.
Oh, brilliant! And how are you housing? What, 5 months a year, 6 months a year, or?
So the cows came in. They came in the last week of November this year, and yep. They were out for about 2 weeks up until last week. So we generally will get cows out the last week of January as they're calved. And we should be finished calving by the first week of April. Just the weather hasn't been very helpful the last week to 10 days. If these storms could go away now. So the cows have had to come back inside, unfortunately. And then the young stock were out until the second week of December this year. So we can keep them out quite a while. Like the young stock generally will go out around St. Patrick's Day again as well.
Right.
So you don't have to keep them in all along. The aim is to try the cows to like as close to 300 days of grass in the year if possible. So
Brilliant.
It's not always achievable, but we generally can get to about 290.
I mean that's that's brilliant though. I mean, I would certainly say. I mean, I'm not a dairy expert, not a grass expert, but looking in, I would say that's quite a good target. And looking sort of at the lost my complete train of thought here. Where was it going? I had a really good question. That's really annoying. I can't think what it was. Just gonna have to change. Doesn't matter. I on Instagram, I follow you, as I've said, Louise, and the sort of grass side. I think between yourself and Sophie Bell, I get my grass fix. It's great, love it. And for those of the people in my office that work with me that are listening to this podcast, they know fine well that my grass knowledge is just ridiculously low. And every time I talk to people about grass, I can just hear them in the back of my head saying, "Why are you asking this? You don't know what the answer is." But that's exactly why I'm asking it. And the thing, I'd lost my train of thought that I was going to say was just for reference as to where we are, what Louise is talking about. We're filming this on the 21st of February. It won't be out today, so just so you can sort of understand where we are. Yeah. Have you ever worked? You said you did some work experiences here and there, Louise. Have you ever worked on a sort of all year round calving place, or not?
I did. So I did 2 farm placements as part of college when in Ireland, farms, and then when I went on to the university, there was another placement to be done. So I chose to go to New Zealand. So I was out there for 6 months, and they did have they had a winter calving block. They only had about 200 cows out of the 1,000 cows calving. So but there wouldn't be too much of it around here. We're generally all spring calving here. And I suppose out of the locality around here too, we'd be nearly the earliest. A few years back, we did winter milk for 3 years ourselves. We got this idea that we'd calve down our heifers in November and December and like get them out of the way for the spring for the cows, the main bulk of the cows. Look, in theory, it worked, but like when the main bunch of cows were dried off, you were left just milking heifers, and that can be stressful with just heifers in a parlour. And at the same time, you didn't get any break at all. And no cow, the milk machine never got turned off those years. It was going every day. So we were already tired going into the spring. So that idea was scrapped very quickly after a couple of years.
It does make sense in theory, but I assume training heifers on their own's a fun game, shall we say.
Definitely, yeah.
So New Zealand, what was that like? It's always the sort of the mecca for dairy folk, innit? How did that go? How did that come about as well? Did they help you get that through uni, or did you work it yourself?
No, so basically it was up to you. The majority of the people in the course actually just stayed in Ireland. I was the only one that actually went out to go dairy farming. I got in contact with our local farm advisory service, and they had a list of kind of approved farms of people they knew that had gone to those farms before and had a track record. So I emailed about a few of them, did a couple of Zoom calls, and settled on a farm about an hour from Auckland, and went out and didn't really know anything bar what they had told me or what I could see on their Facebook page, and just took a chance and went out New Year's Day out on my own.
Had been some experience. Was there anyone else there, or was it just yourself? Well, obviously the owners and such, but was there anyone else that went out there? Not that you knew.
No. So the farm I was on, I was actually the only non-Kiwi that was there. So there was 4 of us working there. There was always 3 working and 1 would be time off. The owners of the farm would be in and out, but they weren't employees on the farm essentially. So there was a farm manager and there was 3 employees. But the rest of them were all New Zealanders. So yeah.
And was that just a herringbone, or did they have a rotary or anything like that?
It was a 70-point rotary.
How did you feel about that? Did you quite like that?
Yeah, like at the time when I went out, I wouldn't have ever had an experience in a rotary, and there wasn't anyone at the time. So I was kind of just jumping heads first, and like once you get used to a rotary, it's very hard to go back to anything else. Like the speed that you can go through cows. Like I came back when I came home, it was like the middle of summer, and I went home. I landed into the parlor and said, "Oh, I'll do a bit of milk." And then I was like, "Jesus, we only have 150 cows. This is taking so long. It's taken 2 hours." And like my last milking when I left New Zealand, I milked 200 cows in like 16 minutes on my own. I was like, "Yep, big difference. I'm home."
Did you say 16?
16, yeah.
Right. Jeez, I didn't realise it was that. I knew it was quick.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, well, it was. They were getting to their kind of drying off period too, so yields wouldn't have been massive. But when cow flow was right and there was nothing going wrong, you could fairly motor through it.
And did you have someone pushing up then, as well as yourself on the parlour, or how does that work?
No, so when we had the full 1,000 cows milking, there was 2 people putting on units, so first and second. The first person putting on units was also operating a backing gate. So that was coming around the yard, keeping the cows pushed up. Second person then was cupping everything. The first person wasn't, and then you had to kind of keep an eye on, I suppose, a third of a round on the rotary, that if a unit fell off, you put it back on. And then the third person then was always bringing in cows, because we had the cows in 3 separate herds. So there was the Jersey herd, the Frisian herd, and then there was like the first and second lactation cows. Right. So that's the way we worked it.
Jesus, I knew it was fast, but that's something else, that is. Christ.
Like
anyway.
we were doing 1,000 cows in about an hour and 20 minutes. Like it was fair going. I was washed up, the whole thing done.
That's insane. I was just oblivious to that. That's amazing. Oh my. I always like to do a wee bit of research when I've got a guest on, and you're not the easiest one to research. If it's not on Instagram, it's not really anywhere else. Some people have got like a wee thing here and there, but I wanted to ask, in your Instagram bio, it says 2018 Queen of the Land. Is that anything to do with what you were mentioning earlier with a business plan, or is that another thing?
that was another thing. So our young farmers here is called Macra na Firma. It translates to people of the land. And we've got competitions. So like we have Young Farmer of the Year competitions, and then we have a couple of festivals. The guys have a festival called Mr. Personality, and then the girls have 3 festivals, and the Queen of the Land is the big one. It's like, I don't know, I always describe it as the Rose of Tralee for farmers, but like the Rose of Tralee is a big Irish pageant as well.
No,
But like
heard of it,
yeah, so it was basically like we had judges for it. So there was a machinery dealership owner was judging, he was sponsoring it. The previous winner was sponsoring it, and then we had Anna Marie McHugh from the Ploughing Championships, and we had the president of the Irish Farmers Association at the time, Joe Healy, was judging it as well. So quite daunting. Like, as someone that was actively farming, I knew all these people. So we were judged on, it's a full weekend, and you have to win your county round before you can go up. So I was representing my county, Limerick. There was 26 of us in it. We even had an entry, we had an English entry, and we had Northern Ireland entry as well. And you're judged basically on how you get on with everyone else, how you present yourself, how well you can represent, your industry. And like you get 15 minutes of a private interview, and then you have to do an on-stage interview. And in my private interview, I got questions like, if you win this tomorrow and the Irish Farmers Journal ring you and they ask you, what's your opinion on vegans? What are you going to say? Or how do you get people to drink more milk, and all of these kind of topics. So they were pretty big. So it was I was new to Macra. I'd only joined it that year. So I went up to it not knowing what I was going for. People kind of told me, yeah, you'll be grand, you'll do well, go on up. And ended up winning the thing. And I travelled most of Ireland meeting young farmers and judging their competitions and giving talks on women in agriculture and dairy farming. I was out in Brussels at the EU Commission meeting the MEPs and the Commissioner for Agriculture at the time. I was in Spain with R2Kast, representing Irish young farmers out. So I did a lot of traveling with it. I didn't realize when I was going there how big a deal it would have been, like, within Ireland. But it was great. It opened so many doors, and it's the reason I started Instagram.
Well, it's funny, as you were talking there, I mean, that sounds awesome, going to Belgium everywhere. Fantastic. It's funny, the next part I'd written was, I wonder if this is going to be related to Instagram. So we might as well jump onto that. You started Instagram because of that. Was that before or when you were started traveling for this? And also, was that the reason why, or was there something else related to it? I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
Yeah, so I won that competition in November 2018. And then I started, it was just my own personal Instagram account, and I was putting up bits of farming here and there or whatever. And then it came to like January, February 2019, and I was getting more people were following me, I suppose, within Macra, and had seen me in the paper doing interviews. And I was starting to get more and more questions and details on the farm and what I was doing, what did I think of such and such a thing. So I said, I might do this properly and, try and put a bit of effort into it and do content regularly. And it grew from there. And then I just changed my Instagram name, and I've left it as my personal and I suppose my farm account, because I like to show it's not only just farming, we do try to have personal time and time away from the farm as well. So I just left the two of them together, but it just naturally kind of grew since then.
And yeah, I mean, what's that? The end of 2018. So basically 1, 2, 3, basically 3 full years, and it's at 25 something from what I can remember. I checked last week. Does that must bring opportunities to you as well?
Definitely. I suppose the last 18 months has brought an awful lot. Definitely, like I've been on television a couple of times. I do a lot of kind of, I suppose, interviews in media, the radio, papers. It's more the young farmer perspective a lot of people want, and getting that out there. But it has opened some unique opportunities. I was actually March last year, I was actually on television. They did a show here. So it was like First Dates.
Right.
But the premise was you sat down and you had dinner with somebody that you weren't going to get on with. So it was called Eating with the Enemy. And
did you have a
sat
vegan
down,
by any chance?
I did. So I sat down to my lovely beef dinner in front of a vegan. So, and that opportunity came from Instagram. The company got onto me going, "We think you might suit this."
How did that conversation go, out of interest?
Look, like I went into it knowing full well they were only going to ever pair a dairy farmer with a vegan. The person opposite me was highly put out that it was a female farmer he was matched with. There was actually complaints afterwards because he was prepared, to have a real argument with a man, and then he kind of got sidetracked when I wasn't a man. But at the end of the day, I had my opinions. I went into it and said, look, I will hear you out as long as you hear me out. I was like, I will tell you, I'm more than likely not going to agree with you. And I know you won't agree with me, but just listen to what I have to say. And he tried several times to kind of really rile me up. I was called a murderer and all sorts of things, but I didn't let him get to me, and I think that probably annoyed him a lot more. Filmed it, and I was like, "Grant, that went fine." And then, as usual, as it gets closer to the airing date, I was like, "Oh no, what did I say?" And, you can't really remember things back correctly. And of course, it aired, and I did the worst thing, and I sat on my phone on Twitter going, "What are people saying about it?" And what I found was so funny was nobody had anything bad to say about me or my opinion or what I had to say. The vegans actually ended up fighting amongst themselves because a lot of the vegans didn't agree with what the guy on the television show was saying. And I was like, that's fine. Leave you off. You obviously don't all have the same agenda. I was like, that's grand.
I think the most shocking part of that is I don't get what the difference between having an argument with a man and a woman is.
Yeah, but I think he was probably more comfortable with being more aggressive with a man. I don't think he kind of wanted to have the same confrontation with me. But at the end of the day, I said it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to have the same opinion as any male dairy farmer. So, but that was his baby.
Yeah, good. Here, probably quite good fun, quite an experience. But I've spoken on this podcast on numerous occasions that there's a lot of merits to veganism as a principle. I've said this a few times, but I think the issue, as with everything, and this happens on the farmer side, the vegan side, anything that involves activism, it's just when it becomes militant. Where it's becoming, I just can't say what I have to think and then listen to you. It's got to be like a bombardment. That's where it becomes a bit of a. But it's an interesting discussion, and I've had many a discussion about it all, just not on a date.
Yeah, so I've absolutely no problem with vegans. Like, I don't go around telling people you should drink a glass of milk or you should eat a steak. Each their own. Whatever they want to do. There is some diet out there for everyone. but it's don't attack the person that chooses not to be like you. You know,
I
I
agree.
don't give out to a person for not eating the same way I do. But yeah, it's when they become extremists. And you know, I get lots like this time of year. When I get back into posting calves on Instagram and cows calving, it's just like a siren call for all of these extremists. And it's just a litany. And once I stop posting calves, they'll go away for the rest of the year. But like they go, oh, it's animal rights activists, and go, no, there is activists, but you're extremists. Like
Yeah,
there
it's
is a
different.
huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I filmed a podcast last night, actually. No, I didn't. 2 nights ago. And the person on it's a journalist. She works for the BBC, or did anyway, and talked about the fact of activism is a good thing. We need activists to make us sort of more diplomatic folk think about it, which is a really cool way of putting it. I'd never thought of it that way, but yeah, it's when it becomes extreme that it's more serious. As I said earlier, Louise, something popped up on. I think it was a Facebook article popped up, and that was where I originally became aware of you about trespassers. Now, this is what I first heard about you. Three folk on the farm, and it made national news, which I thought was good because it shouldn't just be. Know the code is slightly different for you guys, but in the UK, I think our thing's called Know the Code. I don't know if that's exactly what yours is called, but you're basically allowed to walk in fields probably too easily, I would say. But well, I'm not going to tell your story. Could you tell us about that? What happened? And it must have been quite a daunting thing, I guess.
Yeah, so that is the last thing I thought that you would have spotted me from.
That was where it was. That's where I first heard of you. Yeah.
But definitely, no, it was something we've always had, like unwanted walkers, trespassers coming through the place here. Look, the farm has a hill on it. People kind of, you can see it from a long way, and people want to see what's up the top of it, and that's fine. But like local people will always let us know if they're coming in, and it's just common courtesy because we don't have paths through our farms here. There isn't right of ways. There isn't access points. So people coming in, they'll contact us and they can come in the gate. But these people come in through, and I wouldn't even call them a hole in a hedge, because it amazes me where these people can crawl through. And in that instance, I actually videoed them leaving, and the guards couldn't even believe how they got out. But so when COVID came, everyone was locked down. Unfortunately, the side effect, all these people started appearing in quadruple numbers out by the way, walking dogs, and don't even get me started on that. They were walking lurchers and greyhounds. They didn't even have a collar on them. They had a bit of twine around their necks. Like they come in, they'd walk through my herd of cows. And if I go down, in this instance, I drove down the Jeep and said to them, you don't have permission to be in here. You're in my field of cows. There was loose dogs. I said, this is a danger. I says, I want you out. And they referred to me as, love and darling, and, don't be getting so cranky. And, we're allowed being here. The farmer said we can be here. And I says, the farmer didn't say you could be here. I says, I am the farmer. And they're like, oh, you couldn't be. And on that instance, my father actually went around, he was away. So I was the only person around for 200 acres and confronting these guys. So I sat in the Jeep and I took my phone out and I says, I'm recording you now until you leave. And they said, Grant, that they were going to walk up the passage into my farmyard and they'd walk out that way. And I says, you're definitely not going near my farmyard. So like you can see what machinery I have or the sheds or whatever. I says, you'll go back out now, whatever way you came in. Because it says you didn't come in a gate. So show me where you left. So they went out through this hole in the hedge. But this is after they asked me for my phone number. If they married me, would they be allowed walking around the place? I wouldn't put my phone away, so I was got a litany of insults and swear words at me. One of them tried to come at me to take my phone off of me. So then I rang the guards, and they said, Grant, they were on the way out. So they eventually went through this hole in the ditch into my neighbour's field. And I was still watching them. I says, keep going. And they're like, oh no, we're not on your farm anymore. And I was like, how do you know that? Like, because most people wouldn't know where the boundaries stop. But like they knew exactly where they were. But I rang then all the neighbours around because they tried to get into 5 more farms. But I found out afterwards the guards actually did pick them up, and they had confronted another elderly woman on a farm that morning about a half an hour away, and actually threatened her and picked up a hurley, like a stick, and threatened her that if she didn't get out of their way, they would make her get out of their way. So like the guards came to me afterwards and they just said, please don't confront these people anymore unless you actually have backup, because they said, we just don't know what they're going to do. So like, I don't know. I still think about it now. And that was last summer. And I came away and I was waiting for the neighbours to come. And I was at my road gate watching these trespassers walk down the main road. And I was shaking. Like, I was like, how did I hold my nerve? Like, when I was telling these people to get out. But like, it was only even an hour later, like I was in a ball of tears when I realized, I was like, that was really scary. Like, I was a landowner in my own property, and these people just think they can come in and do what they like.
Which is madness, really. I mean, isn't it? I mean, the obviously talking down to you because you're female. This seems to be part of it. The fact that it couldn't be your farm. I mean, that in itself is mad. The fact that they're clearly willing to maybe not attack. I don't know what came of the old woman, but in itself is scary as well. And I think adrenaline overcomes you, and you're like, well, this is my place. I'm going to protect it. I can imagine why after that was so scary. You don't think of it though, do you? I mean, I own the flat I live in, but I never really have to think, someone's going to come in here. It's only a land thing. Which is, well, it doesn't make sense. But no, that was how I originally heard of you, and maybe it wasn't the nicest thing to originally hear before, but no, not nice, and it seems like you dealt with it as well as you could have. But
yeah, definitely, because even I was on the radio a couple of times about it, and and a lot of farmers contact me too, saying, we've been putting up with this, and the advice, like, there were so many different kind of advice being given. Like, some people were saying you should get a shotgun and confront them with a gun, and then I was speaking to the Gardaí and they said that's the worst thing you could do, because they said they know you don't want to use that, so they know like you're more than likely not going to use it. But they said if you even fire a warning shot, there's been cases where the trespassers have ran away, but they might have tripped on something and hurt themselves, and they filed then a complaint against the farmer saying they injured themselves, and next thing you have somebody claiming off your public liability insurance. But like, it's a huge problem here because of our judicial system. The Gardaí are doing as best as they can, and they were as furious about it when I went to them the last time about it, because they said, we know who's doing it. We can put them into the squad car today. We'll take them to court and the judge will give them a slap on the wrist. And he says, we'll see him again. Somebody else will be ringing in 2 weeks' time about the same guy. He says, unless they actually get a severe punishment, they're just not afraid of the guards. They're not afraid of the judges. They're getting away with it. They might get a fine here and there, but you're like, it is, when you hear that afterwards, it's even more daunting that they're not afraid of anything. So are they going to be afraid of a farmer telling them to leave? Not really. Like, they're only just going to laugh at you.
And why should they be afraid if they're just going to go court and it's going to be fine? Oh,
yeah.
€100 fine. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically what they're saying is we're not going to do anything until they injure someone.
Yeah.
That's what this is going to take, which is a worrying precedent in itself. Yeah. I can't remember exactly when this was, but I'm going to guess September. I could be miles off. Yourself and 3 others were the front cover of, is it Independent magazine?
It's a national paper. Yeah.
Hazel, Sophie, Alice, and yourself. I have had Hazel on the podcast. I've spoken to Sophie. I have messaged Alice, but never heard anything back. I'm basically trying to get all 4 of you, tick the full title page box. But yeah, that was, I mean, we've all sort of been in magazines and newspapers here and there through this stuff. I was in Sunday Times a few weeks ago, stuff like that. But front page, it almost looks like the magazine's dedicated to the 4 of you. That's major. How did that come about, that it wasn't just yourself or Hazel or whatever? How did it come about that it was the 4 of you?
Yeah, that was huge. And like, I made the front page of like the Farmer's Journal when I won Queen of the Land, and that was just me on my own and things. But being on the cover of that with the girls, and we got like 7-8 pages, like full spread in the magazine. The photos were actually taken on my farm here, so the girls all came to me, but all the credit goes to Alice. So it was Alice that was approached about it. And it's like you said, we have our own community on Instagram. And Alice came to us and said, look, I want you to be part of this with her. Do you want to do it? And we all said, yeah, perfect, great. But it was great because we all have our own kind of unique angle to farming. I suppose I'm the only grown up on a dairy farm. Continued with dairy farming. Hazel has the vet background, from a dairy farm. Like Alice, no farming background, started as a calf rearer. Now she's a farm manager, started this year as a farm manager on a dairy farm. And like Sophie is just between her beef farm and her milking cows for other people and doing PR work for farm agencies. There's such a great mix between us, but we are great friends, and it has all spanned from Instagram and just watching each other. It's something like, I follow a lot of people on Instagram as well, and you're watching them every day. And then when you actually meet them, you're like, you feel like you've known the person for ages and you might have never actually met them in person before. And that's what it's like with those girls.
It's a weird thing that, I mean, like, for instance, I think before this we mentioned Carol Devani, and I've known Carl for the best part of 10 months now. Never met him. Someone that writes for the Scottish Farmer. Well, she actually just left. Writes for the Scottish Farmer, which is our sort of main farming magazine here in Scotland. She got in touch with me right at the start of Real to Kitchen, which was probably about July 2020, and did a big spread on me. It was really cool. But I've spoke to her ever since then. She's been on this podcast. I've done interviews with her. She's done 2 things with me. And then I met her 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a person. It's so exciting. And it's such a surreal thing that's only really started happening in the last couple of years. But it's really nice. So I think, was it Poddy Burke was the camera person, I think, yes, from memory.
Yes.
Some great photos of you. How long did that take? How long were you at the farm for?
I think they were out for about 5 hours. In fairness, like, he was so good with us because it was such a big shoot, and when we were doing it, we didn't know we were going to be on the cover, so we were just doing an article, and Paddy was taking the photos, and he was like, now girls, he's like, I've only ever taken photos once for this paper and I got the cover, so I'm doing it again, and he'd be like, taking the photo. He's like, think cover. He's like, think you're in like a Netflix movie. And we're like, okay, grand. And he was like, we were doing pictures in my farm sheds. He was like, is it all right if I bring out the smoke machine? I was like, work away.
Fantastic. Smoke machine at the home farm, not something you expect to happen all over Instagram. It was really cool. I mean, I was obviously wasn't involved, but follow the four of you guys, and I actually didn't follow Alice until then, but follow the four of you now. It was just on everyone's story. It sat up the top. God, here they are again. For like a full week. It was brilliant. I really bought into it. It was like one of the coolest things I'd sort of seen the Instagram side of things, because to sort of see the four varied stories, I mean, all completely different, and a fantastic sort of what would you say, just fantastic story for women, and further to that, young women in agriculture, actually. And I have to give great credit to that journalist, because she rang us all individually and interviewed us, and she had no farming background, so it was like, she had to do a lot of research too, but she got everything across really well. And over the years, I have done interviews and for the paper and stuff, and you kind of have to go back to them going, I didn't like how now you said that, or that's not the way I portrayed it. But in fairness, she got all of our stories spot on. Like, it was just brilliant. It was a brilliant opportunity. I mean, that is good. I mean, that one I did the Sunday Times, there was 3 of us in it, and I didn't look too bad. Definitely the guy on the phone just didn't. It wasn't important, was how I felt. But one of the other lads, you'll almost definitely have heard of him, Cammy Wilson, Sheep Game Vlog. Cammy and I speak quite often, but he just made him out to look like he was, I'm the best person in the world, and that's just not how he would have done it. He's confident, but like that didn't come out well. So that's lucky to get someone like that, especially when they're not from a farming background. Like, that takes a lot. It's a big industry to understand correctly. Very good stuff. Listen, it's been great to have you on, Louise. We've been really around the houses, around the fields, if you wish. There's 2 questions I always finish every podcast off with. One of them is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the second one is, if you had any tips for folk getting into it. And I'm actually going to put this in 2 ways: dairy farming, but also from getting to sort of a social media side of things. What would the tips be for those 2 things?
Okay, where do I see myself in 5 years? 200 cows. Okay. Hopefully I'll see that next year, but I don't want to go any further than that. I just not going to keep pushing and pushing. I'll be happy at that, and just to keep improving what I have. There's always improvements to be made. I suppose more on a personal side, I'd like to be more settled down and be, focusing on maybe the family aspect. I suppose every farmer wants someone to pass it on to.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely, 5-year plan is, I want the farm to be better than how I got the farm. That's the main goal at the end of the day. Tips for getting into dairy farming. So if you're not dairy farming at all, best thing is contact a dairy farmer. We're always looking for help, and the vast majority of us are always willing for somebody that's eager to learn. I've seen in the past few years, some of the best milkers that I've had have been the people that didn't know anything about cows, because they know to ask all of the questions. And you might think, that's a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question, because every dairy farm is different. So you can't presume anything. So what you did on the last farm might not work on this farm. So you have to start from the basics. And usually the person just getting in and finding their feet will do much better. But it is just chance your arm, ask them, and, be upfront about what you do know and what you don't know. And, you can always work with somebody. And if you're willing to learn, there's always room for you. Social media, I suppose, don't copy anybody else. Find something. If you're passionate about something or you enjoy something, it will come across. You have to be genuine about it, and don't go on social media with the aim of, I'm going to gain loads of followers and I'm going to get free stuff and gifted items and work with companies, because to be honest, it's a lot of time and it's consuming, and you're watching deadlines to have things posted, and conflicts of interest with companies. It can take the enjoyment of social media out of it. So like, when I got to 10,000 followers, I was like, wow, never thought it would ever happen. And a year later, I've now gone an extra 15,000. It's ridiculous to think how it can escalate, but it can be slow going at the start, and you'll find, once you get to a certain point, it can spiral. But enjoy it. That is the main thing. People don't want to watch people that are being, fake, or they're posting it for the sake of it. You're better off. I have days there where I won't post anything. I don't think I posted anything today, because I just didn't feel like posting it, and it's better to do that, because start again tomorrow then, and people will know you really want to be doing this.
Yeah, no, I love when people do say the 5-year thing, and it's basically doing what they're doing now. Yeah, it's essentially what you said. Yeah, looking at the family side of things, of course, we're similar ages, Louise, that sort of 30 age, you would like to think you would start be looking at that side of things as well. But from a sort of professional side, I guess, it's always cool to see someone that wants to be in the same place. Maybe a bit slightly advanced, but still in the same place. The stupid question one, I mean, you may or may not know, but I'm an agricultural lecturer, and the stupid question one is one that comes up all the time, and I put all of my students at ease by there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I did pretty damn well at getting close when I was a student at one point, where I asked the lecturer what the biggest bull he had ever seen was, because we had a 3-ton one at home. Right now, I was young and trying to understand farming. I was from a farm, but I wasn't all that interested when I was younger. And so I came out in front of the whole class saying about our 3-ton bull at home. So there is no such thing as a stupid question, and even if there is, it's not going to be as stupid as mine, which is probably a good one for them to learn.
I always came from that stupid question thing when I was in secondary school. So we were only like 17, 18, and we had an agricultural science class. And I was the only farmer out of 30 of us in the class. The rest of them kind of took it because they thought, farming, that's easy, to be handy marks in the exam. And there was part of it where you have to be interviewed on your projects you've done over the year, and it's random. So they only pick 5 out of the 30. And the teacher says to me, if your name doesn't get pulled out, just pretend you're one of the other names and go in and do the interview. Because it was, those 5, they were going to average their marks for everyone else. So I was like, all right. So one of the guys' names got pulled out, and he was told he would be going in 10 minutes. And he comes over and he goes, just one more thing, Louise. He goes, what's the difference between silage and slurry? And I just went, here. I was like, we're all screwed. But I had to go. I was like, okay, look, it's not a stupid question. You had the brains to ask me before you go in.
I thought you were going to ask what's the difference between silage and hay, but yeah. Levels to this. There's levels to this. Oh dear. And the social media side, the be yourself stuff. I mean, a lot of the sort of bigger ones aren't overly consistent. They sort of put out when things. You're very consistent in it. It's one thing I've always done every day since I started. Every weekday since April 12th, 2020, I have posted. It's just a schedule all, and it's sort of kept that consistency going. But I love doing it. And I think that's a very important part. I find it fun. I love talking to people about stuff, whether it's recipes I've put up or whether it's whatever. And then another thing is, this is R2Kast 36, but I'm filming it sort of the week the first sponsored podcast comes out. That's obviously meaning I'm tied to something to a point. Now, it's very loose in that I'm just continuing the same podcast and I'm earning money for what I was already doing. But yeah, I think what you said about don't go onto social media to make money. If it comes, great, but only do it if it comes naturally, or maybe not naturally. You can sort of search for it to a point, but only make sure you're doing stuff that feels right to you, and don't just sell things that you don't actually believe in so you can get them for free.
Exactly. You know, you have to have credibility too if you go down that kind of working with brands route. Like, I would get offered a lot of things, but if they're not applicable to my farm and the way I want to do things, I will say no to them.
Yeah.
Because there's no point putting your name to something that you don't believe in or you're not interested in, because the item that you are interested in, you know, you've lost your credibility for it. Like, and you know, the way I work things here, if it's not going to benefit the farm, I'm not going to do it. And like, there is a time frame, I suppose, with social media. I don't know how long I'll keep it going or whatever. It depends on, you know, how life goes and things change. But like, I will keep it going as long as it benefits the farm. And if it's no longer relevant to it, then, you know, we'll see where it goes then.
And you know, that's 25,000 people that yes, there's no way you can physically care about each of them or know any of them, you know, but these people follow you, they've given you that platform as well. And if you go out and just promote something that you really couldn't care about so you could make money, then you're failing them as well. You know, there's that sort of responsibility to it as well, the credibility you're talking about. But no, here, listen, that's been great. Really enjoyed it. Been great to chat, great to sort of get to know someone else in the industry that I didn't know before. Hope you've enjoyed it yourself.
Definitely. It's been a great chat now.
No, good. That's what we like to hear. And for everyone listening, I hope you've enjoyed as always, and I will see you in a week's time for, let's see if I can remember. I cannot remember who it is. We'll see you in a week's time for another podcast. Cheers again. Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished. Another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board, it does take time, and it always has done, but I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.